One of the best things about this job, one of the best things about this show, is that you don't have somebody here like me just sitting here and spouting things off about all things all the time, even about Penn State football, when there's no possible way you could be focusing on all the things that are going on right now within the organization and being an expert and having all the detail and knowledge you need. That's the great thing about the BWI Live Show and about Blue White Illustrated, because we have Ryan Snyder, who's been following the recruiting angle of all of this while we've been following the coaching side of this thing, while we've been following the coaching search side of this thing, and of course the on-field stuff. I've spent a lot of time watching Iowa this week, so I texted Ryan this morning and said, I have not been into recruiting. All I know is it's bad. So Ryan, welcome to the show. You are here to triage the situation for us.
Yeah, it's going great. I started smoking again, drank a whole thing of whiskey last night. No, I'm kidding. Joking. I never smoked actually in the first place. Let me clarify that. But no, just teasing. It's just busy, man. I think for me, we'll talk about this, but you spend 2 years developing relationships with all these guys, and the fact that you kind of know all the parents you got to know, all the coaches you get to know, all the players you get to know, knowing that a lot of them aren't going to be on this team anymore, and those relationships, just from my perspective, that's a little bit of a bummer. But at the same time, what makes recruiting fun is the fact that the unknown, right? You don't know what's coming as far as the 3-star who ends up being a stud, or if all those 4-stars end up being good players. And the coaching change is kind of like that in a lot of ways. We don't know what's coming, and that makes everything kind of really exciting here over these next 50, 60, 70 days, however long it's going to be, which, by the way, we're 49 days to the early signing period.
Yeah, and that's something I want to get to a little bit later, as we're going to be talking about the landmarks of what matters in recruiting in relation to the coaching job. So I just want to get like a joking, but also seriously, like, obviously this is not life or death, you're not triaging anything, no. But I do want to know how bad is it right now? What is the situation like for Penn State recruiting as you've been following?
Truthfully, I think as good as you could ask for. In 2027, guys, obviously that class was the one everybody already had circled, because 2026 was, they had a couple players, but it's not a top 10 kind of class. So losing all 4 of those guys, I think that probably really bums fans out as much as anything. But also, let's be realistic. I mean, 14 months to go. Keemon Spell was going to end up taking all these visits anyway. I mean, he could say he's still committed, but really was he? Not in my eyes. I mean, Khalil Taylor opened up before it, before it even James even got fired. I mean, Leighton Von Brandt felt like.
Was that more of a performance and trajectory sort of thing with those guys? Because obviously they committed, and then you lose Oregon, and then things don't go well. Is that more of a writing? I don't want to say writing on the wall, but also like not what you expected or were signing up for, given the expectations, sort of thing. Do you think?
Certainly, I mean, for Khalil Taylor, wide receiver development, it's no secret. Like, that was certainly part of his decision. At the same time, like, let's also not overlook the fact that these guys just kind of committed too early. And looking back, and obviously we can Monday morning quarterback that all you want, but when you're stud prospects like that, let's be honest. And these guys all have agents now. The whole point of taking official visits and all that is to kind of pit one school against the other, and that is college football now. And I'm not saying that financials were the main reason they're thinking about that now, but they also understood, I think, to some degree, that maybe I should be looking at a couple of these other schools, because at the end of the day, one, let's look at all of our options, but two, it's probably what's going to be best for me. 10 months from now, when official visits or all that would be starting. So my whole point with that is, like, I wouldn't be upset about the 2027 class situation. That was going to happen. I felt like that was already kind of falling apart, whether James was here or not. 2026, again, they've only lost, I think, 4 true commitments at this point. And I think that's all you could really ask for. I mean, look, but at the same time, all these guys are saying they're committed, but they're talking to other schools, and they have to. Go ahead. Let's
get into that then, because I do think that the verbiage that has been used by these players it is consistent, and also feels like I want to dig into what this means. So there's the officially decommitted guys that have opened up their recruitment. And then there's the committed but planning to take visits. And those are the guys that I think are the most interesting. So let's start there. What does that phrase mean to you, and what is it signifying? Because it feels like a lot of these guys are not even like wanting to necessarily do that from some of the things that I've been reading or what I've been hearing from you. Matt Sieg doesn't seem like he necessarily wants to go take visits, but it feels like this is kind of has to sort of approach. So I guess how do you view that approach from whomever is putting that kind of style of statement out there for these guys?
Absolutely. That's absolutely an approach that Penn State wants them to take. That's a consistent message that the staff, recruiting staff, remaining assistants have made clear. And I think it speaks a lot to the guys that they recruit. We talk about character and all that stuff all the time. Penn State does attract a player that fits Penn State. And that's very, very important, especially in situations like this. Now, at the same time, truthfully, do I think I'd be shocked if more than a handful of those guys actually sign with Penn State at this point. And really, actually, let me clarify. If they were to somehow get a coach in before the early signing period, maybe that could change. But we can get into that a little later. The point here is that, a lot of these guys have been committed for a long time. Kevin Brown's one of them. And even the guys who haven't, the Isaac Chikworas of the world, there's a lot of players in this group who want to be at Penn State, but they also understand that, one, maybe they won't be as wanted, which Kevin Brown,
right?
Some of these high guys, like they will absolutely be wanted in that situation. But there's others who, maybe a little bit further down the road or down the board who maybe won't be. So
yeah,
it's an understandable situation that you have to take visits. You have to pick up your phone. You have to look around. It sucks for the players. I feel bad for them in a lot of ways, just because they had everything mapped out. Everything was good. A lot of these guys are trying to go early, so that forces them to really kind of figure this out in like 30 some days, 40 days, maybe.
What about the guys that have already paid and accepted to Penn State? Is that something where
anything.
they can? Okay,
doesn't mean
all
anything.
right. That's
no.
okay.
Their paid accept wise is that's an NCAA rule that allows Penn State's coaches to basically be in contact with them whenever they want, via the phone, via in person, off campus, all those things. But that's not, you can be paid and accepted into Penn State as well, and then decide, oh wait, I want to go to Delaware or
right. There's nothing binding there, so
no.
that okay, no. Yeah, okay. That's interesting. I wonder that. And then how many of the guys, just to recap for people here on the show, how many have officially decommitted from the class of 2026?
LeVar Keys, Davion Brown, Jaziel Hart. That leaves 22 still committed. I think it's interesting that two of them are wide receivers, right? Let's be honest. That's been a loud talking point for a year and a half now, and it's been especially loud here in recent weeks. So not really surprised by that. At the same time, I absolutely wouldn't be shocked either if if Penn State was able to get a hire before that, if one or two of them, came for a visit. The one thing I will say is when there is a coaching hire, when there is a new coaching hire, guys can't take official visits again. So if they got someone last week of the regular season, Penn State could get them on campus theoretically in the last couple of days of November. I know you want to go through the recruiting calendar a little bit, but like I kind of have to hit on it here in a second. But like it is. December 1 is the start of a dead period. And it's funny because when things are going well, at your school, you want that dead period because it kind of keeps guys from flirting late. Yeah. When things aren't going well and you're in the middle of a coaching change, it's not good timing for that situation. But it's just so hard to say right now whether that is even realistic for Penn State to get somebody in here before December 4th, which is the start of the early signing period. It's just so hard to know right now how that would play out. But if it was, if they were to get somebody in, certainly they could get guys on campus there those last couple of days in November.
It's interesting because like the coaching search and the recruiting class are inexorably linked, but then there's all these other parts of the coaching search that are unlinked to recruiting. So none of these timelines work out great or match up great, especially if you're going after a high quality candidate. That is, a team that's successful. Like you're most likely Penn State isn't going after a team that's 8-4 and the coach is on the hot seat anyway. So there is a certain level. Are there other levels of decommitment or other levels of commitment in here? How would you gauge the temperature of the commitments that are here when it comes to? I don't know. We don't have to go through every individual player, but I'm interested in how that's all working out.
There's plenty of players who haven't really said anything publicly, but it's the same situation. If out of the 22 guys who are still committed, almost all of them should be fielding calls to some degrees. I just think that's the reality of the situation. And I don't know what else really to say other than that. This is going to drag out at least a month. And that's why these guys need to go probably take some visits elsewhere, see some things. I do think guys like Marlon Bright, Kevin Brown, like I said, Chikworas, Sieg, there's others too. Matthew Lama, maybe to some degree. There are certainly some guys in here that like obviously the relationships are incredibly important. I don't want to overthink that, but they also fit Penn State for a lot of reasons outside of those relationships.
Right.
Even Julian Peterson to some degree. So I am very curious to see, like, if we got down to that point and there was maybe some scuttlebutt behind the scenes on, somebody's coming in or, talks on the phone or whatever it may be, how guys would maybe react in that situation come December 4th. But for the most part, I would expect basically all 21. Obviously, Adam McCam Gibbs is over in Ireland. I don't know how his situation is going to end up playing out, but the 21 guys who are committed in the United States, they should probably be looking into taking official visits, and pretty much all of them are.
So there's going to be a lot of movement here. Great time to remind you right now here to subscribe to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Let me get that. We are just like a couple people short of 19,000 subscribers here to the site. And it's why we've been saying this whole time, things have been super normal. Things have been super in rhythm. And I understand that for certain people, like, then I don't need to subscribe because everything shows up exactly when I expect it to. But this is what happens when you don't. You got to be prepared for these situations. So subscribe to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. We have a special guest coming up on the channel this week. Josh Pate joining the show. We sat down with him last night. That's coming to you later today. So make sure you subscribe, enable notifications so that you can receive alerts when all these things go up. And of course, if you're watching the video here, Ryan's doing a great job of getting you all this information to give you an insight into recruiting and the temperature. Everyone wants to know the temperature of the locker room, the temperature of the recruits. Hopefully they're all 98.7, which is what the human body's supposed to be. But you can get that here on the BWI Live Recruiting Show. And of course, the main source of information is BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Subscribe right now for $1. You get access to recruiting information, intel, all the other things. Just the whole basket of stuff that we have 5 reporters working 12 hours a day, not sleeping, grinding the film, grinding the phones, letting you know what's going on with Penn State football. Sign up now for just $1 in this coaching search time. Sean Fitz put up his Hot Board 2.0 yesterday, and it's been very well received. So check that out at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Also, this show is brought to you by Andy Ludicky at My Perfect Franchise. You want to change the way your world view is, you want to change your position in the world, one of the best things you can do is change your job, because that informs a lot of what's going on in your life, from the amount of time in your life that you're spending earning money to the amount of money you're actually earning. And the best way to live the American dream is to manifest your own destiny, and you, unfortunately or fortunately, you need money to do that. So talk to Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. If you have corporate skills, you have the ability to manage a business, you have those professional understandings in a certain field, right? So maybe you have expertise in a certain field and you're working for somebody else and you want to start your own business, or you want to buy an existing business, or maybe you want to buy into a franchise. Andy Ludicky has been doing this for a long time now, and he knows how the process works of buying into a franchise, so you can be your own boss and you can make money for yourself and not for somebody else. Get on his calendar today, Andy at myperfectfranchise.net, 404-973-9901. Or you can talk to him on the Blue White Illustrated message board. He's a regular over in our area. He is a Texas fan, but he's available on the message board. You can tag him, and he'll talk to you. There's a I believe a monthly franchise of the month contest where he'll go on and he'll say, guess the franchise, and if you win, you get a 6-month subscription to the site. So that's pretty awesome right there. So check it out. Great reason to sign up for Blue White Illustrated and to go talk to Andy. And of course, today's show is also brought to you by Ann Lusk. The purchase or sale of a home is a major life milestone. Don't do this like on your own. If you see a for sale by owner sign in the front yard, run away, because this is a very complicated legal transaction and you don't want to get it wrong. Ann Lusk is a proud supporter of all things blue and white, and her team are now in Happy Valley. She wants to be in this community to help them understand the process and to help them with one of the biggest transactions that's going to be in your life. You need a experienced professional to guide you through one of life's biggest decisions, and it's backed by a trusted name with a commitment to excellence. So check them out, 814-808-7588. That's 814-808-7588. And they can do just about anything. You want to buy a home, you want to buy a retail property. She also specializes in land transfers. So if you want to buy or sell a farm, listen, I don't know your situation. Maybe you want to be a gentleman farmer, right? And you want to buy some land in Happy Valley. Absolutely. Why not? Do it. I would love to do that. Give her a call, 814-808-7588 or luskandassociates.com today. You can check out all their listings here in Happy Valley. And of course, like if you aren't here in Happy Valley and like anywhere in the state, you can search and they've got properties and they have representatives all across Happy Valley and of course down into York where she is. That's kind of their home base. So appreciate them for being a sponsor here on the show. Let's dive back into some of these topics of conversation that I think are important for fans to understand. You mentioned the timeline. I think that's a really important thing to get into of the coaching decision and how that lines up with the recruiting calendar. December 1st is a dead period. The early signing period is December 3rd, I believe. December 4th?
Yep.
4th. Okay. So the end of the college football season is November 30th. That feels like a very small
You are right.
window.
December 3rd, my fault.
Okay. Yep. But either way, like we're talking the difference of 3 or 4 days, or 4 or 5 days. Like this is a very narrow window for them to land the plane perfectly for the entire calendar. And it would coincide with the end of the regular season and the start of the recruiting season. I don't know how that's possible, but like, how does all of this work out in your mind to help get as many of these recruits in the door as possible? Or is that not what they want because the new coach wants to have a say in what the new roster looks like?
And truthfully, it's just going to depend on who. Like I do feel like if it's a Matt Rule, which I know I'm reading the chat here, people seem to be very mixed on. It's possible, right? Like a 9-3 Nebraska, right? They're not in the playoff. Good enough season where you can kind of justify that hire, improvement, all those things. Like that wouldn't shock me if you could get him in right at the end of the season. Maybe even Drinkowitz or Matt Campbell, some of those guys. I think Penn State fans want to shoot higher for that, right? And if you watch Kraft's press conference, he's certainly giving off the impression that he's going to go, as high as he possibly can, right? So that's the interesting part here. I think no matter what, like the 2026 class is going to get stripped. What makes it difficult now is with that early signing period, so many players that should be a Penn State caliber are going to be signed at that point. And sure, there will be a couple who hold out. Maybe even some of Penn State's current commits hold out. But a lot of them are going to be signed by that point. Now, I know fans will point to the transfer portal, which obviously it's going to be heavy. I think you're going to have a lot of outgoings and a lot of incomings. That's going to be January is going to be wild. Can't wait for that, T. Frank. But
I know, right?
But at the same time, you want to also like scholarship distribution is important. You don't want to have a situation where you're only bringing in a couple of a handful of redshirt freshmen and a handful of true freshmen, because you kind of can get in the situation, especially if a few of them transfer out down the road, where you have kind of a lost class, right? And that, especially as you're trying to build a program up into the caliber Penn State wants it, you don't want to have too many of those classes where it kind of feels like this year in some way, where you're all in on this big season, right? And you kind of you need a year or two to rebuild. Like that's not what you want, especially when you have the expectations that I think many fans have and that Kraft is putting out there. I mean, that's the one thing I'll say about Kraft's press conference is, boy, he's aiming high. And
he's aiming high, and he's selling the hell out of the opportunity at Penn State. And this has been one of those things that I find interesting. He mentioned elite resources 2 or 3 times, and here on the show we've had the argument of like, what is elite? How would you define Penn State's resources? And so that is absolutely part of the sales job here, and I don't know how all of that works into what would be a very expensive recruiting class if you have to go through the transfer portal to build your team. I understand you need to be great at evaluation in the transfer portal, but if you want to follow his guidelines of like be aggressive and build a team, that is going to be expensive, especially on the front side of things. And I'm on a tangent here, so I'm just going to keep going, Ryan. If you look at some of the fast turnarounds and fast rebuilds, Dan Lanning at Oregon, that obviously is a program that's rich in resources, and he has gone into the portal and built his team. It's like they're building the plane in the air, where they have the recruiting resources are coming in. You saw the things they're able to do in recruiting, but while that was happening, they're going out and they're getting a Derek Harmon from Oregon. They're getting a Jamari Caldwell from Michigan State. They're getting a Jamari Caldwell. They're bringing in a Dylan Finneman here in this particular the transfer cycle. So they're doing both. And I guess, I don't know, do you see Penn State being able to turn a light switch on here when the new coach gets in? You are now then using those resources differently or something like that, where you would see almost a push in that direction initially? Or is it that You're going to have to wait a year for all that to happen.
They're going to have to some degree. Again, a big part of that's going to depend on the outgoings. I think there's a lot of things. Like we go all day. Like, does Terry Smith stick around? If anyone's going to stick around, if there's anyone that you would think a new coach would want to stick around, Terry Smith is very high on that list. And you got Jim Knowles' contract in there too. Is that going to be another buyout? Like, is that going to be somebody that Penn State's kind of like, hey, maybe we should keep this guy, please? Financial reasons as much as anything, maybe. So there's a lot of things there that you just, until it happens, it's so hard to say, in my opinion. But it's obviously going to be a very heavy transfer portal, outgoings and incomings. That's going to be massively important. If they did go for a coach who was in the playoffs, I'd be honestly very surprised if Penn State waited until after the first round of the playoffs to potentially hire someone. I just think that's a very long time. And you don't make this. Don't get me wrong. Let me clarify some things. Pat Kraft had to make this decision when he did, and I think anyone who was in that stadium the other day understood that. Whether you think Franklin kind of got screwed over a little bit, or where you thought Franklin absolutely had to go, I understand why Pat Kraft woke up Sunday and was like, I have to make this decision, because it was toxic in a lot of ways in that stadium, and I understand that. At the same time, you make this decision when you do, and there's a reason all these other schools have made a decision already by now, because they are trying to get ahead of it as much as they possibly can to not have a hire that's mid-December or, God forbid, even later. So I still feel like that's where it's going to make someone like a Signetti or some of those really top coaches to try and switch a little more difficult, because of that.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, mid-December. So long way to go, man. It's just until we really kind of start figuring out like maybe who this thing's narrowed down to or anything like that, we can just riff and raff all we want. The main thing to know is it's very difficult to keep this 2026 class together. Maybe they'll be able to keep a couple, and boy, January is going to be wild. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's also I had this conversation somewhere. I think it was on social media, where somebody was saying, like, let's just say Penn State is hiring somebody that's in the college football national championship game, which is after the transfer portal. You might not get any players. And these are all like mental gymnastics. Like, we're all doing theoreticals. If, let's say, I like Eli Drinkowitz's offense, right? So I'm just going to use that as an example. And we know that there are players that have ties to Pennsylvania on the roster. Like, there's a lot of things I just want to use him as an example for. If that were to happen, and Missouri is playing in the national championship game, Missouri is now the place that Eli Drinkowitz wants to be. It has been proven that he can get to the national championship game or win it by being at Missouri. So why would you leave at that point? You are at the mountaintop. Even if you lose the game, that is where you should be at that point, because now you have the groundswell of resources. You have the backing of the program, most likely that they're going to spend more. Same thing you could say for Indiana and Kirk Cignetti, of like, Kirk Cignetti's made it very clear that he can win at Indiana, and he's gotten the resources to turn over the roster as quickly as he needs to. So I don't think that it's a better or worse program in the hierarchy of like Penn State may be a better, bigger brand or whatever, but it's about winning. It's about winning. And if you can get to the championship game, you've proven that you can win at that location. So like, I know this is a total side conversation, but these are the side conversations that are making up the larger thing of like, where is Penn State's head coach going to come from? And I agree with you. I don't think if you're going to be a college football playoff team, this is a conversation that's realistic, which then I think mutes the ability of them to hire the best possible candidate or the most desirable possible candidate. The whole thing is crazy. In the NFL, at the very least, the draft doesn't happen until April, May, right? And free agency doesn't happen until March. So you can wait around for a head coach who's in the Super Bowl or an offensive coordinator who's in the Super Bowl until then. And I think if it's going to be one of those teams that's in the playoff, it has to be a coordinator. It cannot be the head coach is leaving to go to a new destination.
Seems highly unlikely. Is Brian Kelly the only coach that had a team in the playoffs and left before? You go to LSU. I think it's the only example I can think of. Yeah, probably. And the reason I bring that up is, do I think that's going to happen? Absolutely not. I think that's very low probability a coach does that. But at the same time, like, if there's one thing we've seen about Pat Kraft in the last year or two, is that like, he is not afraid to spend money. And what that means down the road for maybe some other sports or how they balance the books, whatever it may be, I'll be curious to see. But we know he'll be aggressive. We saw that with Jim Knowles. We saw it with Andy Kotelnicki. I mean, they've been very investment heavy in a lot of ways with football. So how investment heavy does he get to try and get somebody in here sooner than maybe what that coach would prefer. And
yeah,
I don't know, but it's just, there's a lot of angles, a lot of different things to look at. That's a curious one to me because, again, you look back at that presser, man, like he's not trying to, kind of say what the floor is or be open, honest about where Penn State athletics at. I mean, he is painting it as good as anything in the program. And don't get me wrong, Penn State is absolutely a blue blood. They should be up there, but I'm just thinking financial reasons and NIL and all those things, like they're not quite there, or at least the vibe that I think maybe a lot of national people think it is, especially if you watched them the last couple of days. You got people out there talking as if Penn State has just like this infinite bank account and infinite donors. And that we just know that's not really been the case, over the last however many years.
And we actually talked to Josh Pate about that. So check that video out coming up this afternoon. Let's just say this afternoon, somewhere before 7 p.m. I don't know exactly when, but it'll be sometime this afternoon. So we got our coaching search conversation in for the day. Check that off the to-do list.
Can I ask one thing to fans? I just want to see it in the chat. Like, what is your realistic expectations for the 2027 season? Give me a record. Because I think most of us all kind of agree, like 2026 was going to be a bit of a step back. Compared to this year. I think many agreed with that. And that's also, I think, why Pat kind of looked at the roster, looked at different things, and was like, well, this is my window to do it, right? Because we know there's going to be a little bit of a step back next year. But I'd just be curious to know, like, if I could do a poll, and maybe I'll put that on, Twitter or something like that, or a message board one day. It's like what do you think that record should be? Because I'm just, and I see now 10-2s, 9-3s. We got 7-5 in there. Like, I'm very curious on what the fan base expects, because I think, like, one, there's a brand new stadium that year. Obviously, it's not brand new, but the renovation's done that year. That's going to be a big, big season. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of excitement around the new coach next year. But I'm just curious on what fans kind of expect that year, because, the odds say that it's going to be difficult for Penn State to pull a Nittany basically and improve right off the bat. The odds say that they're going to have to take a little bit of a step back for a year or two before they can improve. That's just, just look at all over the place, different coaching changes of schools of Penn State's magnitude. So that's why I asked. I'm just curious what fans think.
Nittany came from JMU, which is like a step with their schedule, like allowed for him to get in at the right.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. So like, if you do want that, then you should be looking at a lower level program that has a great coach that is ascending, as opposed to a coach that's on the top already.
To me, like, USC is kind of an example. Now, Penn State's been better than USC, under Helton, right? But then what do? Like, oh, it wasn't good enough, so we're going to go get Lincoln Riley. And obviously, USC's playing better now, but it took them a couple years to really right that ship.
Lincoln Riley was on the hot seat as of like August 31st.
Like Miami, example. Manny Diaz to Mario Cristobal, right? Like, I mean, again, were they as good as Penn State was? No. And that's where it's kind of hard to find a comparable, true example here, just from a wins and loss perspective and all that stuff. But it's just, there's a lot of examples of all right, you did good, but we want better. And it takes some time for that better to come, or it's taken multiple coaches to get there. So it's hard to find those examples. That's all.
What is the best case and worst case scenario in your mind for this particular stretch of time for Penn State to stabilize as much as possible through that transition with bringing in talent? So what's the let's start with the best case scenario of how this transition goes and how they're able to retain or bring in new players with a new coach from what his preferences are. Maybe if he has a recruiting class at a different school. Like, what do you think the best case scenario is here for Penn State?
For 2026 or everything?
This immediate transition.
2026, like, again, to me, I'd be surprised if I'd be shocked if all 22 of those guys end up at another school. I just think there's enough kids here in this class who fit Penn State really well, care about a lot of things that Penn State fits best with, that all of them would leave. But it's hard for me to envision more than a handful. Again, that's especially the case if, we get to the very last hours and maybe there's a coaching change on December 1st, December 2nd, and all they can do is have a phone call or two, which realistically, that's kind of where things point to, honestly. We'll see where things go. But to me, I'd say a handful, and worst case scenario would be, basically all of them are gone. But also, whoever they bring in is going to bring in a bunch of players with them. Now, obviously, I think most of us agree that it's going to be hard for Penn State to pull a coach away from a Penn State caliber school, if that makes sense. because most of the Penn State caliber schools should be playing in the playoffs, and that makes timelines difficult. So, whatever coach they do get in, Matt Rule, Matt Campbell, Drinkowitz, all these guys, their talent of recruiting classes that they have, one, they won't be able to bring them all, and two, who they do bring in, is probably going to be similar to kind of what Penn State already had, or a little bit worse, honestly. So in a lot of ways, the 2026 class is going to end up being not a wasted year, but it's going to be, a smaller class. I'd be surprised if they get back to like 20 or anything like that, even by February. And if they do, they're taking chances on guys, which is what we kind of saw Franklin do 15, 16, 17, getting guys with good measurables, but, have a long way to go. I can see that to some degree, but it's going to be a smaller class for sure.
Do you feel comfortable saying guys that you think make sense to stay through the transition, or is that not anything that's reasonable at this point? Are there guys you say that fit Penn State and that teams would think universally fit into a football roster because of their talent or because of their measurables or whatever?
Absolutely. Yes. I think there will be some, but I also think if you're expecting Messiah Mickens and Kevin Brown and some of these highly coveted 4-star guys who haven't gone out and visited other places for the most part, and now will at some point here in the coming weeks, which then, by the way, if they visit multiple schools, kind of drives a bidding war at times. It'd be kind of risky, in my opinion, for some of those more coveted players to wait. Maybe they will. Maybe their commitment to Penn State is, as strong as anything. For example, I have a story on Kevin Brown right now. He is going to take some visits. It's up on the site. You guys can check out where and when. But I mean, Kevin made it clear to me in that interview that, Troutwine is very important. And while the relationship with Franklin was always good, he wouldn't say that Franklin was the most important thing. Kev cares a lot about the school, the proximity to the home, and really just Penn State is known for producing, and he still feels good that whoever they get is going to be a quality coach that can produce him. So that's a positive there for Kevin. At the same time, go read some story. There's some major schools coming after him. Same with Elijah Littlejohn, another example. Messiah Mickens, feel bad for Messiah in a lot of ways because Messiah knew he committed early. Back in the summer, wanted to take official visits elsewhere, right? We talked about the flirtation with Notre Dame and all that. Obviously had a very close relationship with J1, but also knew the ramifications of being committed for so long and then going to take visits and how Penn State fans would perceive that and all those things, how that would hurt him. The kid does everything right. Again, it wasn't perfect that he flirted with schools, but he does stick. He is loyal. He doesn't go visit J1. He does all these things, and then boom, this happens. So I feel bad for someone like Messiah because he truly looked at all angles and knew, I probably should go do this, but man, I don't want this fan base to be really upset with me. I do really care about this fan base. I care about the coaching staff, Franklin, all that stuff. And then here you are with 48, 49 days to go, and it's like, oh, geez, now what do I do?
All that commitment to have this happen. Yeah.
Here's the other thing too. I talked about this a little bit on the message board. I'll talk about it here. If you're, especially with Kevin Brown and Messiah, look at their schedule coming up. They play Saturday games. Anyone who lives in Central PA knows Harrisburg plays Saturday afternoons. They have 2 home games to go. Okay. They're going to get a bye week after that. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, when they might take visits. Anyway, as long as they keep winning out, which they would get a first round bye. But then if you're the top seed in the playoffs, you're playing at home. So there's 2 more weeks of Saturday games. Yeah. And last year, we don't know exactly when the District 3 championship is going to be. Last year, it was on Saturday. Oh, by the way, if they win that, the PIAA semifinals, when they go play the Whitfield School out in Altoona at Mansion Park, Saturday. So my point with all that is, if you look at the next 5-6 weeks, those 2 specifically are very limited in their window to be able to go visit schools. That might be a positive for Penn State. At the same time, that bye week window they have, they both have to go visit schools, and they might have to visit a couple schools and maybe take a couple of days off of high school to get that in because it's going to be that important.
So there's a question here in the chat from Bearded and Broke 92. What are your guys' expectations of the total number of players on the roster next year because they need to fill out a team? The other thing is the scholarship limits are changing, or the roster limits are changing. Yeah. So Penn State had been all the walk-ons had been granted, grandfathered in, right? So this also changing in the change. So I guess, are they getting to 105 no matter what, or how do you see that? Because that's a great question.
I was always told they won't get to 105, and just kind of way the financials of it work, that it's unlikely that most schools do. Some will. There will be a handful that do push that, but it's going to be difficult for most to get there. Whoever comes in will absolutely do their best to balance it the best they can. At the same time, how much do you balance numbers with guys who deserve to be here, if that makes sense? And that's where the head coach and whoever takes over is going to be so important in that, because there are plenty of examples of player or coaches saying, hey, I need depth here. I'll do whatever I got to do. And more often than not, it doesn't work out for them. Obviously, they try to take guys with good measurables and have some athleticism and, pray that it works out. Normally it doesn't. Or over a coach who says, okay, maybe we'll be down a little bit this year. But I'm not adding guys to add guys. And truthfully, that was James Franklin the first half of his career, because he had to, right? 2014 on, he kind of had to just do whatever he could to build this up. And now in the second half of his career, it's been much more, hey, I'm not adding the guy just to take a guy. Like, if you don't deserve to be here in our eyes, all good. I'll wait another year to add someone or the portal. And that's where the portal makes it very exciting, but also at the same time, when you're going through a coaching change, nerve-wracking, because Penn State is going to lose a handful of players that none of you want them to lose. It's inevitable that happens. They're all on the market now. So
that's a lot of stress, as Pat Kraft said in his opening statement. I feel confident in making this move because Terry Smith is on the roster, and that's just a lot to put on one guy, sure. Especially when he's not the guaranteed next head coach. And that's, to come back to what we've been saying this whole time, to understand the recruiting and understand the direction of the program, you need to understand who the coach is. And right now, all this indecision is creating the opportunity for these guys to go elsewhere, because nobody knows. So it's that. It's the Wild West. It's crazy to think of what could be with the roster itself, as you just pointed out, and then on the back end, the opportunity, the excitement of well, if you get this guy, then maybe he brings X, Y, and Z, and if you get this guy, he might attract X, Y, and Z, and if you get a quarterback guy, he might attract blah, 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 on and on and on and on. So we'll keep following it. That's going to be, and the recruiting is a huge part of the piece. So here on the BWI Live Recruiting Show, we're going to keep talking about that and giving you the latest with what's going on with the team. But just last year, to put a point on this, Penn State, I think they were 15th before James Franklin was fired. Now they are currently 17th. 16th. Yeah. They were 16th? Okay, so they've dropped just one spot with the relation to this news. So as you mentioned, Terry Smith being the interim head coach and everything that's happened, about as good as possible through the first 5 days. But it's just
one thing I'll add too is the size of Penn State's recruiting staff. These are so many. I have so many questions, because James, for all his faults, he also did a very good job at modernizing this program. I think anybody in this chat, you guys watching this, I think you should agree with that. You should understand where this program was, how antiquated it was, and how he has modernized it. And now there's a big recruiting staff that is the way Penn State's been doing it the last year or two is the recruiting staff does the vast majority of the actual recruiting, the conversations and all those things. So that's a big part of why I feel like a lot of these guys have said, hey, I'm going to wait as long as I possibly can before truly decommitting or whatever it may be. And give Kenny Sanders and AZ and Slim and all those guys a lot of credit, the Riches, all them, because they deserve a lot of credit for the relationships they built. And that's why we're seeing somewhat of what we're seeing right now. At the same time, time's ticking, and it's going to be hard to hold them off.
Yeah, keeping all the ducks in a row for as long as possible, but gets harder and harder as you get longer and longer into this, and we aren't even a full week in. And on top of that, football happens on Saturday. Penn State plays Iowa on the road at Kinnick Stadium. So we're going to get into the game now, and Ryan, I want to ask you to focus on just the Penn State side of things. Okay. No, that's next week, thankfully. So we can everyone can recalibrate, and everybody can get a kind of catch their breath of what's going on.
I have bad news for you. If you think we're recalibrating and catching our breath anytime soon, dude, that is not happening. Welcome to a coaching search, buddy.
For at least a week, there's not also a game on top of it, so you can wrap your arms fully around one topic as opposed to having two or three. So with that, I do want to talk to you about Penn State I want you to focus on the Penn State side of things, and I'll provide kind of some context with the Iowa team.
Because I don't watch
Iowa. Them this year. Right.
Iowa fans don't watch Iowa. But let's call it
on a normal year, you wouldn't want to watch Iowa, and let alone on a year like this one and a week like this one. So, yeah. So I guess the what are you hoping to see based on what you've seen so far? Start with the Penn State offense, right? Okay, so what does that look like to you?
Fire, drive, Terry's talked a lot this week about how upset everybody is about Franklin. I mean, what's the quote? We feel like we failed Franklin. Show me you feel like you feel Franklin, because there's a lot of guys out there right now that I thought were NFL draft picks that just haven't looked like, yeah, I'm sure the NFL draft picks are not to the caliber that we thought they were. But
guys that aren't even playing as well as last year. So it's not even that they're
Absolutely.
not playing up to like an NFL level, but they weren't playing as good as what made us think they were draft picks in the first place.
Absolutely. So that's just what I mean, it goes everywhere, man. I mean, obviously I think the D line's circled a little good bit. I think the O-line has been great. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know they've been quite as bad as what everybody thinks the O-line's been, but you know better than me. Yeah. You watched it more than I have. I'm not going to pretend that.
Yeah. They can, there's an area where they can play better there. But absolutely. Also if they're as banged up as they seem to be on the right side, like the point of an offensive line is the weakest link. And if you've got 5 guys and we know the limitations of some of the players out there, and suddenly now Anthony Donko's hurt again or whatever it might be, then, what is the upside? The perceived upside as the longer you go becomes less and less of a reality.
For sure. So just how do they, Terry teased last night, taking a good look at the depth chart, right? Switching some guys up. I mean, at this point, sure, you want to get wins. Absolutely. But how important is it to get Cooper Cousins more reps? How important is it to get maybe some of those young receivers out there, right? Obviously, K-Tron and Nick they're going to get their carry. I'm sure they can maybe work in some running backs, but I don't see too much of that change in there. But to me, it's about, maybe working in some younger O-linemen, working in some of those younger wide receivers, and then obviously the front 7 defensively just has to show me something, because it's been rough. It's been rough at times to see the defensive line mainly get pushed around. And then obviously the linebacker play has just been so inconsistent. And when you lose a hyper athlete like Tony Rojas, it's just kind of put up or shut up time at this point.
Yeah. So
I guess that was last week actually, but go on.
Let's do this. Let's talk about the new starting quarterback for Penn State football, Ethan Grunkmeyer. Put up his press conference, his first one as Penn State starting quarterback this morning, so you can check that out here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. What do you think the offense looks like around Ethan Grunkmeyer in this game? Like how do they protect, or how do they showcase him in your mind?
Against Iowa, at night. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. He's got 39 snaps, all of which have been, basically scrub time. Obviously had that one last week when it really mattered, but it's so hard for me to say, T. Frank. I'm not trying to duck your question. Naturally I would say
I'm just asking you. I'm asking you to set it up so I can answer it later. That's all.
Well, here, I'll just set it back to you, buddy. Just answer it for me, because I don't know. I mean, I would obviously, you want to build confidence there and all those things, right? But at Iowa, 7 p.m. against a defense that is Iowa, maybe. I mean, I know they rank well statistically. You've watched more of Iowa's defense maybe than I have. I don't know kind of where they are at that level. Yeah, they haven't played a whole lot as far as powerhouse. They're
not as good as Iowa teams in the past, right? And the talent wise, but the problem and the good thing for them is they're as consistent. They're just not as physically dominant. So they still have the same techniques. They still have the same drive, and they still play with the same IQ, and they still play with the same general togetherness on defense. But the talent, there isn't a Cooper DeJean out there, right? That I've seen at least. And I think that there are places you can beat this team. But can Penn State beat this team? Can Penn State take advantage of the fact that they have a 285-pound defensive tackle starting for them, and the other one's 295? They look like Penn State defensive tackles out there. And that is not something I'm used to seeing. On the other hand, though, their defensive ends are about the same size as their defensive tackles. So that makes it like across the board, they're incredibly like Northwestern last week, but better in certain situations and circumstances. And so, yeah, Ryan, I don't know if they can beat Iowa. So Sergeant BB want to know, can they beat Iowa? Any other year, I would say, yeah, this team with the talent that I've seen them amass, the way those guys play, they should be able to beat this Iowa team. They should be able to get some deep shots on this team. I don't know if this team's capable of it. Absolutely not. I don't have the confidence that that's the reality.
Especially with a first-time starting quarterback, right? And again, I know Drew hasn't been great this year and all those kind of things, but to throw Gronk in this situation, which, oh, by the way, then he plays 2 top 10 teams after the bye week.
Right.
Holy hell,
I would say,
welcome to college football.
I am much more concerned about the Ohio State defense and their style than I am the Northwestern one, because they use a lot of deception at Ohio State, where they'll use simulated pressures, they'll use NFL concepts. Like, they brought in Matt Patricia for a reason, and all of the integration of those things has gone well. And on the college level, I was curious, like, will they be able to get it, and will they be able to execute these things without making mistakes? And they are. So that's a high bar. Iowa's defense is very sound, and they can do some things that will challenge a quarterback's perception of the defense. I do have some hope, as you mentioned, establishing the run in whatever way they can. Establishing the threat of the run is a real thing. Grunkmeyer is I'd say pretty good at playing off of those things in play action. His delivery, his mechanics, he's very smooth and repeatable. One of my favorite things about him, and this is a very stupid thing to like for a quarterback, but he's a good RPO thrower. And by that I mean his hips are quick, he can reposition his body, he can reposition his feet and throw consistently from a very quick transition. Not every quarterback can do that. Not every quarterback can get their arm and their hips and their feet in alignment on some of those footwork things where you're in the mesh point and suddenly you have to throw in half a beat. It's not as easy as it sounds. That's something he's good at. And that's what Andy Kotelnicki desperately wants from this offense. He wants to use every trick to mitigate the defense, to put the certain players in no-win situations. If you walk up to the line, then we throw the ball. If you stay in coverage, then we're going to run the ball. The issue being, like, Penn State has to run the ball when the give signal is there. And if they're able to get Iowa a little bit off kilter, I do think that Grunkmeyer has the opportunity to take advantage of some of those things within this defense. Because, again, as good as they are, you can't be everywhere at once. And they spread their defensive secondary, especially the first level of the defense, is they spread it thin, right? So they play 3 linebackers. Sometimes they play a nickel. But they want to not come out of their base personnel. And to do that, they have to protect that unit with the front 4. And I don't know that this front 4 is as good physically as it has been in the past. Now, they're still good. They'll still cause you problems. So it's a bit of an up-in-the-air thing for me when it comes. Because the problem is I've seen Rutgers and I've seen Indiana moving these guys off the ball, on a couple of plays that make you think, okay, they're maybe not as dominant as they have been in the past, but I don't know how it plays out. Like, I know I'm just kind of going around in a circle here, but I don't know how it plays out. I just think there are opportunities for Penn State to win this game on the road at night with a first-time starting quarterback. I think he can inject some life in the way he plays, and I did a video yesterday breaking down 4 of his most important throws this year and why I think that signals his personality. But then, Ryan, like, Greg is telling me it's supposed to be 20-mile-an-hour winds this weekend as well, which isn't great for a passing game.
Yeah, right now, 10 p.m., 9 p.m., 52% chance of rain, and yeah, gust of up to 20. So that'll be fun for Gronk to have to deal with. But again, like, to me, like, win or lose, I think Terry kind of hinted at this last night too. Like, just show me the fire's back. I think that's where you have to start, and that's how sad it's kind of gotten. Because that Northwestern game-winning drive last week was one of the most eye-raising things I've ever seen. The fact that how easily they kind of just pushed around Penn State's defense to drive down the field and win that game. And obviously, Drew got hurt, and once that happened, it was like, oh man, I don't think Penn State's coming back from this. But the drive before was just like, wow, they really. It feels like they've kind of quit. I don't know how else to put that. So I saw earlier, like, I think it was Tree Hunter. He's like, they have the right leadership now. Like, they can do it. And I don't disagree. Like, the talent's there. There's a reason the whole world thought they were a national championship contender. But my God, I mean, it's been so the balloons has been so deflated in recent weeks that it's just hard for me to say, like, oh, there it is. They're going to be right back out there with, a quarterback who's played 39 snaps. And, I do think it's important to get K-Tron going. Is it easy to get K-Tron going against an Iowa rush defense? Maybe not the best place to try and get that going, but certainly K-Tron's played well. Obviously, getting Nick going would be great, but I don't even know what to expect at this point.
Yeah. Here's my problem. What does giving up or quitting or not playing with energy look like? And how do you distinguish that? I'm not asking like how do you distinguish that from just not being good enough? And that's been my struggle. It's like watching the film and watching the players and their interactions. I guess like not getting off blocks is one thing, but what if you're incapable of getting off blocks and that's been a consistent issue? I struggle with that. And
Sure.
here's the thing is like Terry Smith is saying it. So like, he would know better than me, but also his goal is to motivate those players and to believe in the positive there. They were holding on by a thread against Oregon, and whatever changed in the last 2 weeks has caused them to crater. And I don't know if that is effort. I don't know if that is now teams have figured them out fully. I don't know. But that's been my struggle is like, I don't know how to distinguish bad effort from just an inability to play. Because the problem is they're not getting off blocks on either level, linebackers or defensive linemen. Other than Zane Durant and Denai Dennis Sutton, who have been more consistent at doing that, everybody else is struggling to get off blocks. But it's like, does Zariah Fisher not care now? Or is it just that he's struggling as, a first-time starter and we're learning about him? Like these are the things I don't really have a good answer to. So I guess like that's been my biggest question going into this game is there an upside in that? Or is that just like the belief that there's an upside? I don't know.
Hard to say, man. I mean, Xavier Gilliam's been struggling. Jalen Harvey's been struggling. Coleman's been out hurt. Maybe Coleman can give a little bit of a spark if he's back. I'm not exactly sure where his injury status is. Obviously, practice wasn't open yesterday. But yeah, to me, that's again, we can just keep going on and on about it. But it's all about show me the fight. And look, if you are going to right the ship to some degree, you try to make a bowl game, all that, you kind of got to win this game. Because if you lose 6 in a row, sure, Michigan State sucks. Maybe you can beat Nebraska, Rutgers, but like your season is what you're trying to be 6-6. Like you want to talk about,
really how many guys are going to even want to play in the bowl game at that point? How many?
It just feels like if they're going to show any fight, and then go out to Columbus and show some fight or show some fight against Indiana, like it has to come now. And I know I said earlier, like it's now or never. Obviously, that was last week, really, but if they're able to rally and show the type of team that Penn State fans expect, it has to happen Saturday night. And I'm not honestly like what sucks is like I could see a better effort in a lot of ways, but Grunk's just in a lot of ways a very, very difficult situation.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what we see coming in this game. So give me your thoughts on how this plays out.
That's kind of exactly how I just laid it out. I gotta be honest with you, T. Frank, is that I do think we'll see some more inspiration. I can see the defense playing better. I do. I think obviously Iowa's put up some points against some mixed teams. They didn't really do a whole lot against Iowa State. And who was it before? Who they played? Was it USC they play or who was the Big Ten team they lost to?
Rutgers? No,
they lost.
They played Rutgers. I forget.
Yeah, long story. Like in the 2 games that they did that really matter, they haven't done a whole lot offensively. Indiana State. So I wouldn't be shocked if Penn State's able to hold them to 20-ish. I do believe that there's something still in this defense, but like, can Penn State score 21 points in this game in shitty weather conditions and a brand new quarterback and an inconsistent running game? And maybe they'll bring in some freshman wide receivers or Luke Reynolds has a great game or something like that. But like, there's just so many questions offensively, starting with the fact that Grunk's played 39 snaps. It's hard for me to predict Penn State's going to outscore Iowa in this game. And so, I mean, that's kind of where we're at. I went with, I think, 27-17, I believe. What did I go with? 27-20. Okay. And that's just kind of how I see it. It's Penn State might be able to stick around for a little while, but man, it's hard for me to see Gronk not turn the ball over once or twice. It's hard for me to see Nick Singleton flipping this switch that we just haven't seen yet in any game, really. K-Tron will get his yards, sure, but against an Iowa defensive front that's going to be sound, as you always bring up, can you expect K-Tron to average 6 yards per carry? I don't think you can.
Yeah, and that's where they've needed play above expectation in this entire season. It's funny because, like, I said this on the show yesterday where I immediately go to who's the best team that Iowa's played, and I'll watch that for comparison to Penn State. And maybe from a talent perspective, sure, but not from an execution perspective. And I was watching Indiana, and just the fact that they broke tackles, and the fact that you got a guy one-on-one in space, and it wasn't an immediate, like, you fall forward for a yard. They were able to put players in space. And I'll give Andy Kotelnicki credit of, like, when he's put players in space, they haven't rewarded him with a big play outside of structure. And so a lot of the frustration about Andy Kotelnicki's offense has been constrained by the fact that only certain plays are working, and the narrower you get, the more tunnel vision your offense gets, the more you're putting guys in a worse situation because schematically other things aren't working. And like if the players make the plays, then there's less consternation about like the plays that aren't working, because the ones that you do have, catching third downs and extending drives, or breaking a tackle when you get open space so that you convert a first down, so it's not 2nd and 8 or 2nd and 9 and suddenly it's 2nd and 2 and now you have a chance to take a shot. A lot of times they haven't even had a chance to take a shot because they haven't got enough plays. They haven't gotten enough first downs. And yes, they've been kneecapping themselves by going tempo when they do, but it's not like they've just gotten a lot of easy outs from the players actually making plays and breaking some bleeping tackles. And this is not just a this year thing. It has been a several year thing going back to 2022, I want to even say, of guys like just not breaking tackles. And other teams are doing that. Like Indiana did that against Iowa, and Iowa still held them in check, right? So they were still able to hold one of the best teams in the country in check. So for Fitz's score, because I want to make sure he's part of the show today, he's out today with a doctor's appointment. Iowa 23, Penn State 16. So I think that's kind of a similar view of what he thinks of this game. Of Penn State scoring into the high 20s feels unlikely, and I guess for me, I'll put mine up here. I still feel like the floor with Ethan Grunkmeyer, or maybe the ceiling with Ethan Grunkmeyer, is 20 points. So Iowa 23, Penn State 20. I do think you get a little more fight from the defense. I also just I struggle because I don't like these offenses they're facing. I just don't like them. I think that Iowa's offense, they've got a good offensive line. They're going to rip off runs. They probably score 27, right? They probably score more than I'm giving them credit for. But a good team can hold this team under 20 points. Iowa State did it. Indiana did it. Rutgers and Iowa got into a shootout, which was wild to see. But then, after the first half, Rutgers got their head out of their ass, and they held them to, I think, just a touchdown in the second half. So this is an offense you can control even with a good offensive line. The running backs aren't special. They're good. They get the yards that are there, but they don't break a ton of tackles either. I don't feel like they have great vision. And all that, I could be right about that, of what I've seen on film, and then Penn State's going to make them look great. Like, I don't... This is very frustrating because, like, the process I would go through of saying, is this team good or not? This is an average run-of-the-mill Iowa team, which should finish anywhere between 6-6 and 8-4. What is Penn State this year? And like the floor for their points, or their ceiling for their points in this game, I guess I'm saying, is 20. I'm probably optimistic because I'm a positive person. I believe in positivity. I think Ethan Grunkmeyer is going to play well, and maybe they score 20 points. But defense could give up 30 at this. I don't know. Final thoughts here, Ryan.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. 50-some days, like I said. I still feel like, obviously, it's all about the coaching search at this point. Penn State season is what it is, unless they're somehow able to pull some massive upsets in Columbus and against Indiana. So where's that coaching search going to go? You're going to hear a lot of names. Truthfully, I still feel like in the end, a Matt Rule, a Matt Campbell, they're kind of, I feel like, your most realistic options personally. I know fans, some of you guys don't want to hear that, but that's still kind of, I do think there's a lot of smoke behind Matt Rule. We'll leave it at that.
And of course, you should follow us at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com to get more about that. We're going to have our coaching hot boards updated regularly. We're going to have intel on the coaching search. We've got the most plugged in people to get you the information you need. And here's the deal. Anyone can put any name to any photo on Twitter. Today, I made the speculation. Like, I just think that the ghost of Vince Lombardi fits Penn State too well. And you can't prove that the ghost of Vince Lombardi isn't interested in Penn State and that coaching job, which is exactly how you could do it about any other coach that's been named on Twitter over the last 4 or 5 days. So just, consider the source of where you're getting the information and remind yourself which one of those things. This is all entertainment. Even our information. Football is a sport. We do this for people's entertainment. But if you're on social media, probably more entertainment than reality. That's just my opinion of how these things are going, because you can just, I'll agree with Eli Drinkowitz. There's there's no threshold for what you need to say to have it be on Twitter. Yeah, just look out there because people are telling you that there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Anyway, we'll be back with Josh Pate later today. And of course, then we'll have our tailgate show starting at 4 p.m. from the Legends Pub inside the Penn State Conference Center and Hotel. Coming up this weekend on Saturday, we'll have great game day content as well. Ryan, thank you for your time today. Awesome insight into everything going on with Penn State recruiting. For Ryan Snyder, I'm Thomas Ryan Carr. We'll talk to you later.